29, 2025. I can't believe it's almost the end of January, Ramzi. It's amazing.
And it's very cold since we're both of us in Canada. So definitely it's a very cold January and time flies so fast. And in the world of projects and PMOs, everyone is moving fast to the execution. So it's really timely, this conversation. Thanks, Bruno, for the invite.
Right? Oh, that's my pleasure, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you here with me, and it's a pleasure to have this group of friends joining us today. It's amazing. I'm very excited to see some familiar faces here, some new faces as well. That's very cool. That's very cool. So yeah, so I wanted to, to start by thanking everyone for joining us today. Thank you as well, Ramzi, for joining me today in this conversation. Ramzi, you and I always talk about creating these community, right? This group of PMO leadership leaders that can, get together and exchange ideas, um, suggestions, or maybe just vent to each other and say, hey, this is not working for me. I'm so tired of this project management stuff, right? So it's amazing to have this group of friends joining us today, because that's what this community is about, right? It's really to exchange ideas, exchange experiences. I think there's a lot of value when we do that. We don't need to do things alone. And a lot of times when I talk to other PMO leaders, right? They are trying to figure things out by themselves, and it's a missed opportunity, right? Because there are so many people doing amazing stuff out there in other industries, and it's great to see, how we can leverage each other's experience to accelerate the maturity in our own PMOs as well. So I know there's a lot of people, a lot of friends that are joining us today from all over the world. So if I can ask you guys, please just type in the chat where you're joining us from. If you're from Brazil, from Canada, I think there's people from Middle East as well, from Europe. So please take your time to just let us know where you are joining us from, because that's going to be very, very helpful. And so this conversation today, it's really a casual conversation. There is no PowerPoints, there's no formal presentation, right? So I want to get everybody at ease here to collaborate, to participate. It's not just Ramzi and I talking, it's for everybody. How can we exchange some ideas about PMO in these digital times, right? So we have seen lots of digital transformation initiatives, not only in IT companies, right? But they are everywhere. They are in finance, they are in construction, they are, of course, in IT, banking. So they are everywhere. So I think it's a very relevant topic. So we're going to be talking about how the PMO can sustain, right, and can support those digital initiatives. But we are also going to be talking about how the PMO can benefit from these technologies that we have today to become more efficient and more value-driven units for our organizations, right? And then, of course, we want to talk a little bit about the study groups that Ramzi and I will be leading. Starting in February, we had I don't know, over 100 people reaching out to us, interested in being part of this group. Of course, we couldn't accept everybody because the intention is to keep this group small, but very engaged. But we are very excited about this first study group with these group of PMO leaders out there. So very excited about that. But let's jump into our topic for today. So Ramzi, thank you so much for joining us today. So Ramzi Kaiache is a good friend of mine. I have known Ramzi for a few years now, but he's the Assistant Vice President Digital Transformation at Manulife Canada. So expert in digital transformation. He has led PMOs in several organizations as well, and he has been very successful in his career journey. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, Ramzi, for this conversation today.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruno. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that introduction and really detailed view in terms of everything that you're building in terms of communities and such. And welcome, everyone. So just building on Bruno's points in there. So it has been like Bruno has been phenomenal in terms of trying to build this community and bringing everyone together. And as he keeps iterating in this call, it's this kind of building community of experts in digital transformation, execution, in PMOs and delivery. And that's the ultimate goal, is making sure that we have this community that's sustainable and we have conversations in terms of common challenges, common ways of solving problems that we face continuously to our different organizations. And that's the goal ultimately that we want to get into. And then Bruno momentarily will start in terms of some key questions that we want to start going through regarding PMOs, challenges, opportunities. But then before we get there, just to give you a brief overview in terms of my expertise and career and where I started and how I came into this different roles. So I figured out one of my biggest passions. It's really mobilizing execution and driving outcomes into different organizations, regardless if you're talking about uh, let's call it widgets making, like actual manufacturing or oil field services, or we're talking about financial services, where Bruno and I intersected, and we had a lot of thinking and sharing of knowledge with each other, especially the challenges that we run into and how we can solve them. And this is where I found this passion of driving execution. And I'm currently leading Manulife's biggest digital transformation, of which I play different roles. But then, if I want to really simplify it, there's the as several of you in this PMO world, there's the portfolio aspect of it, which is leading the portfolio of many projects, like 500 list of initiatives that need to be on budget, scope, on time. And if there's any slippage in terms of risk and issues, you manage that side of things. So that's one archetype of PMOs that you typically see from your expertise. The second archetype, it's related to anything business casing or making sure that projects gets approved. So there's that type of PMOs that make sure that the project before they get launched, they have a very strong case behind them in terms of the financial benefits, KPIs, outcomes, scope, budget, timeline, of course, and even the delivery approach sometimes to make sure that the delivery is clear, whether we're talking about a waterfall roadmap or agile kind of epics, user stories, delivery way of thinking. That is the second type of PMOs that we experience and we also deal with in our own organization. The third and last type, it's nothing surprising to you, it's pure delivery PMOs. So these are the ones that are typically seen are more visible because these are the ones that have a bunch of project or program managers and they have projects that they are coordinating and driving and they're applying the right methodologies to drive the outcomes. And in my current role, I have some of that aspect as well within my current organization. Some project managers reporting to myself, driving the biggest, most strategic initiatives at Manulife, and even in my previous role in other financial institutions as well. So these are the three typical PMOs, and today's conversation is ultimately about how PMOs are seen as value drivers, not overhead. That's the thing that you will want to avoid, and I'm sure all of you are dealing with it in your own organization, trying to explain the value of project management, the right approach to drive outcomes, how you can move strategy to execution, and then ultimately the value of this standardized way of delivery in terms of PMOs, so that it's seen as not as a hindrance barrier to outcomes, but seen as a value add, being able to drive your outcomes. That's the biggest I found challenge. And it takes a lot of effort. There's no single way solution. We wouldn't be having this conversation today if there was a single solution. Like, okay, let's apply that solution and we're done. So there's different ways, vectors that you can address them to be able to drive the outcome. So that's the way that we have been tackling it, to be seen as a value added organization, that we see the tangible results being moved from ambiguous vision. Like, for example, oh, we want to unify our different web applications, for example. It's like very high level vision and we have some budget behind it and everything. But then this needs to be moved into really concrete, ultimately roadmap to be able to deliver it, and then results ultimately as measured by the outcomes. These are the kind of things that drives and makes sure PMOs are seen as value driver while raising the risks and addressing them continuously. So that's the common thread I found in my experience, and definitely it's super exciting to drive these different outcomes together.
This is amazing, Ramzi, and I'm looking forward to dive into all these concepts with you today. I'm just going to encourage everybody live with us to, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box or raise your hand if you want to ask Ramzi directly or ask myself. That would be, amazing. Let's make this very, very interactive for each other. Okay, so Ramzi, I want to go back to the very beginning, right? I know we have some people here who are very experienced in PMOs, who has, been leading PMOs for many years. Some other folks might be, more they just started leading PMOs, or they aspire to be PMO leaders, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about the beginning of your journey, right? Because I know for many people watching us today, sometimes it's by happenstance, as we say, right? It happened by accident, right? So it happened to me, becoming a project manager, becoming a PMO leader. It was by accident, but it has been an amazing journey for me. So I want to ask you, how was that journey for you? It was by accident as well, or it was, something that you planned and, happened to you?
That's such a great question, Bruno, because the way you're describing it is that was it an intended approach that, like, you
Mhm.
just from the beginning, early in your career, that's something that you would, as a person, aspire to be as a project manager or PMO leader or program manager or any variation of this execution kind of sphere, product owner, if we go to the agile side of things, like that kind of capabilities, product manager, is it by design, or is it, as you said, like a happenstance, or you landed into PMO kind of roles or project management roles? So for myself personally, I think it was a very similar journey to yourself. So what I figured, it was different roles. I was pretty much doing PM role without having the PM name in the role itself. What I mean by that is that you are having a clear scope that needs to be delivered, like something very specific that needs to be created within, number two, a limited time scale, meaning it's not an BAU situation. It's a very limited time. You need to drive these outcomes immediately. So there's some time pressure element to it, and things need to be moving super fast. And then third element, no surprise to everybody here, it's that budget aspect of it versus the return, i.e. the financials. So you have a limited amount of resources that you're spending, whether you're talking about capital expenditure or people, the resources that you are onboarding temporarily in that time scale to drive these outcomes, while you're continuously managing the risks, the chaos. Things pop up right, left, center. All of you experience that daily in your projects and PMOs. There's a risk that is immediate, just today it happened and has high probability of becoming an issue, or things that are down the line in the future and you can see them coming and you want to prevent them by putting some prevention and or mitigation measures, or you accept them. You say this risk is acceptable, very low. Let's not focus on it because there's so many things to address. Back to how many limited resources and time you have to deliver that scope. So I figured that I was pretty much doing that in my early career when I started my career in the oil industry. So I was literally driving projects on the different website sites, and I was called field engineer. It was just different nomenclature. And then gradually, as I started moving in my career, I started converging toward these roles that have project management aspect to it. So this is where I realized in my work with the Airbus when I was in the aerospace industry, what if I simply join project management and that, because I'm doing that kind of work and that's the work I enjoyed the most. It involved working with people, managing stakeholders. It involved these quick sprints of delivery, and it was never boring. There's always something new because nature of project, because of that time element I spoke to, you're always doing something. You finish it, you deliver it, you feel that sense of accomplishments. You move to the next thing. So that's what I loved about it. It's that it has that a limited time kind of window where you can drive impact and then you have to move to the next thing. Some people don't like that. So this is also that personality aspect of it. So you would need to judge yourself if that is something that attracts you in terms of experience. If it's something that you find fun in terms of changing roles and wearing multiple hats and you coordinating with people and bring them all together, or there, and that's okay. Like there's some, like sometimes as personality, you don't want that quick sprints and quick focus of delivery. You want something ongoing and you want to have longer strategic conversation. You want to develop longer term roadmaps. That is a different competency capability. And we need both of those skill sets. So you need that thoughtful, long-term thinking, the strategic, but then you need this PM delivery execution that is in quick sprints and focused intensity, high intensity. You get it done, you get it delivered, then you move to the next best thing. And it can be even organizations as well. Which brings me to the final point, like what the reason I enjoyed this and I found it common across organizations. I love the fact that project management and PMOs, to a certain extent, it's industry agnostic. What I mean by that is it does not depend on which organization or type of work you do. It's generally similar. You can be today doing something in automotive industry, tomorrow you can be in aerospace industry, the day after you can be in financial services industry. So it's very generic to the point that you can apply it in different industries, but then still have those same core competencies, which is this value creation, the way you can structure things, the way you can make sure the strategy is clear, the way you establish your governance, your steering committees. It's very similar. So it's the same competency that you can use in different industries, which gives you a lot of flexibility. I think that's what really fantastic about these roles, because it helps you pivot when you feel stuck in your current company or current industry. You don't need to just keep hitting your head against the wall with that specific industry. You can make that decision to pick that toolkit and use it somewhere else. And especially if you consider that now project management, PMOs has, roughly speaking, and Bruno, you can opine on that one, and everyone on the call, you have those two branches, which is the, let's call it the waterfall branch, which is the more kind of PMP oriented. It's like sequential to some extent and such. And then you have the agile, more software oriented approach, which is continuous delivery, more flexible approach. But then there's a lot of overlap between the two. So it's these two kind of approaches, they're quite similar across industries. That's what I found. So I think just to kind of complete that thought, I found it, again, to recap, industry agnostic, super exciting type of work that you end up doing, and super impactful ultimately in terms of the results you deliver, because you can see it in that limited time and limited outcomes that you need to deliver under high pressure of budget and resources.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point, Ramzi. I love when you mention about different industries. They have the let's say their own constraints and their own limitations, right? But you need to tailor your PMO to what delivers value to that organization, right? So you may have a framework or a playbook, as you said, that worked well in one organization, and then you go to another organization, and you cannot just bring, it's not a lift and shift, right? So you have to really adapt and tailor to what's going to be delivering value to that new organization, right? So that brings me to my next question for you, right? You have been leading PMOs for different organizations as well, right? So what have been the typical challenges that you have faced when you start in those organizations, right? And I know for some of us, it might be people don't believe in the PMO, right? They feel that the PMO is there just to make everything more bureaucratic. There will be more paperwork. Things are going to take longer. Things are going to be more expensive. So there is a change management element that you have to manage to really prove the value of the PMO, right? And some other organizations, they don't even know what the PMO is about, so they don't even know what to expect, right? So I don't know if that has been your experience, but I'd love to know, from your experience, right? What have been the biggest challenge that you have faced, and how did you overcome them?
Absolutely. I think you hinted at it, Bruno. That's a great question in terms of challenges we face. And before I answer that one, it's typically like I found from my 15 years in different organizations from execution point of view, there are three elements of buckets and where organizations typically fall, and each one of them, they weigh a little bit heavy on one of these different areas. So I found some organizations that are very heavy on, and they're interrelated, like these three elements, because it's almost like a how do you call it, like a flywheel effect, like they build on each other. So that first element, I would call it more strategy planning aspect. So I found some organizations, they're super heavy in terms of planning a lot, spending a lot of times to put together their business cases, making a lot of nice looking PowerPoint slides and really, getting tons of consultants sometimes so that they can help them crystallize that vision. And you go deep into that rabbit hole of over analyzing things. So that's one archetype I found. Second one is I found some organizations, they might jump directly into the execution mode. So a lot of organizations they might have that good execution muscle. They're very quick at moving strategy to execution. They're very quick at being able to drive the outcomes and pivoting and test and learning and all that good stuff. So some organizations, they over index on that side of things, which can put you also at a risk because you might not be super thoughtful into your planning because you might jump to conclusions and then you start spinning too much because you execute and then it's not the right plan to begin with, and then you start iterating the plan, and then you move to execution again, and then the plan was also wrong. So there's some spin on that one. The last part of this kind of triangle or kind of three way I'm looking at it, there are some organizations that they focus a lot on the reporting aspect, i.e. reporting what already happened or will happen. So they go really deep in terms of KPIs, metrics. They go deep into their kind of reporting to the executives, your steering committees. There's a bunch of decks going around telling how things are going, statuses, and going deep in that. That's also not good if you go deep in that, not being balanced with all the other elements. So you start over telling stories and just trying to craft truth to different audiences at different levels, because you have the C level, the middle management, and then the front line. It creates a lot of work, and then you start over indexing on your Power BIs, on dashboards, investing a lot in that element. So that's the third kind of aspect of it. So I think what I'm trying so to answer your question, therefore, there, Bruno, I found organizations, they hit this function if they over focus on one of these three, but not holistically on all of three in balanced way together. The best organizations are the ones that balance getting right the planning, the strategy first. Then second, moving that strategy to delivery execution streams logically. And then third, having clear metrics that measure those outcomes to that strategy. So it's closed loop. It's not kind of disjointed, disconnected. So that's where I found organizations, they have to be careful where they fall within these three elements and make sure that it's balanced. And then PMOs themselves, they're this glue in between. So they make sure that strategy, execution, governance, with the reporting side of things, it's all well connected and it's not coming across as heavy on any one of them. If you come heavy on any one of these elements as a PMO, you would see it as non-value add. If you're a PMO that's only strategy, it's like, oh, this team, they're only giving us work. They're only giving us plans. They're not doing the work. Then if you only do the work without the planning, also it's not relevant because you're not connected to the business strategy. And then third one, if you're too much reporting, they're going to hate you equally. I'm sure all of you can relate to that as a PMO. It's like, oh, these guys, PMOs, they only produce this, what was it, the red light, traffic light, color coding, red, green, yellow, and reports and steer codes and this. So that's what I would be careful of. It's like, don't falling into the trap of any one of these three.
Ramzi, I really love what everything you said, right? This eagerness to jump into action, right? I think that's something that kills many PMOs nowadays, right? Because we think that we know what our organization needs, right? And we are going to build the PowerPoints and the reports to kind of to try to meet those needs, but we never really took the time to understand the organizations, right? To understand the PMO customers, right? And what they need and what they value as well, right? And that's what I found so beneficial. I was watching another webinar yesterday from PMI talking about the new PMO Prezi guide that PMI is launching next week, right? And you see that they have a flywheel where the PMO customer is right in the middle, right? So it starts by really identifying those PMO customers, listen to them, identify what they value and provide them what they are looking for, right? And I also like when you said that sometimes you over-engineer things, right? So I think there's power in taking perfect actions as well. So, let's create some high level report here, or some metrics here that shows that we are delivering what you need, right? And that's the way that PMO can start gaining some traction, right? And sometimes it can be just locally, right? In my group, or I'm closer to the IT team, I'm closer to the marketing team, so I'm going to start providing value to them, measuring some metrics for them, measure some benefits realization for them, and then that will help us, because by word of mouth, right? People will tell about how the PMO can help them, and others will be interested in joining the boat as well, and getting that support from the PMO, right? So I love all those things that you said. I think those things are fantastic. And I want to ask you a question related to that, right? So in your PMO today, right, how do you measure value for your customers, right? Are you following the traditional metrics like projects delivery on time, projects delivery on budget, or do you have different metrics that are more aligned with what your stakeholders are looking for?
Absolutely. And that's such a great question, because ultimately it's all about value to customer. Like this is really simply what we're the North Star that's guiding all the efforts that we do, whether you talk about PMO and or organization overall. It's what is the value that we're trying to delivering to the customer, and are we able to get it on time with the limited resources and everything. So just to answer directly that question, Bruno, so for us, and that's public information, like it's into our financial reports and everything. If you go into this, it's called the Digital Customer Leadership Roadmap of Manulife, so it's out there. You can check it out. There's town halls about it and everything. Simply put, we anchored the outcomes directly to customers and shareholders. As simple as that. So the outcomes of this 3-year digital transformation, large scale, $1 billion investment into many programs across the organization. We anchor the value of that being successful to the customers as measured by, of course, our NPS, meaning your Net Promoter Score, i.e. customers are happier. The happier customer, there's more happier customer than unhappy customers. Like there's some math behind it. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So that's how NPS is calculated. So that's one thing in terms of the customer. That's really the North Star of the value we're driving to the customer. On the shareholders, no surprise to anybody on this call, is financial benefits, i.e. that we're investing this much $1 billion over 3 years, that we're going to generate 2 to 3x return on that on those benefits, whether you're talking about revenue increase, meaning we're able to drive more return in terms of selling more to our customers, or cost saves in terms of being able to reduce our cost baseline or grow without increasing our costs, which is it's called growth absorption or cost absorption. So these are the things that we consider in terms of the current transformation. So these are very strategic, very high level, reported to the public in terms of how we're doing the outcomes to our customers, to our shareholders. And then the third element is internal. So we definitely have very rigorous measurement and way of capturing how much manual work we're doing internally. So that's called STP, straight through processing. So making sure we have very clear metrics to make sure that we're driving automation in terms of our internal processes and everything. So that's called bigger strategic outcomes, portfolio level, visible and everything. But then when you go internal to each project, that is not as easy to answer, because each program, it adds up to these elements for sure. Like each one of the programs under this $1 billion, it's 1-to-1 to these 3 elements. We make sure that they add up to these numbers in total, because that's how they get summed up. But then, of course, each program at its level, it has its own specific metrics of success. And that's non-familiar to this audience in here, everything related to committing to scope and delivering on the scope itself. And then are we able to deliver on time in terms of the outcomes, timelines itself, and then the budget tracking. I think what you're hearing from here, which I also seen in previous organizations, it's not, I don't want to say unfortunate, but it's the reality of things. And maybe because we want to explain it easier to our executives, we never went deeper, unless anybody on this call wants to opine, we never went deeper into any additional theoretical measures that are usually captured by, let's say, the detailed agile burn down charts of the user stories, or the earned value calculations and going deep into that math. It's like we never went into that direction. It was always leaning towards simplicity and things you can explain very quickly to senior executives who are not day to day in the project. They have no clue user stories and all that. They're only seeing those big picture numbers, and they want to make sure that this thing is going well. There's no issues. There's a clear roadmap, and we're able to deliver on those outcomes. They truly don't care, like as simple as that, about these detailed metrics, because they trust the team that they will do that work internally. It doesn't need to be visible at their level. So that's something to be considered in terms of the metrics, which this is where I'll go as a final point on this one, which means as a project program manager, make sure you yourself, you're driving your projects, you have those metrics and you're driving towards them, like the ones that are driving your specific program success. But then don't lose sight over, to Bruno's point, your internal customers, whether they're your executives or senior stakeholders, of how you can tell them the story very simply without going too deep into the theory and the math, because they trust you in the math and the theory of the earned value and everything, but they don't want to, they're not interested in talking about it in detail about it because it's too theoretical to their taste. I don't know, Bruno, if you've seen the same from your experience, expertise, or something different.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, Ramsey. I was just going through the chat here, and Debnat is asking a question about if there is any difference for companies that are more product oriented, right? So instead of you meeting the needs of your internal clients, you have external clients who are developing products and releasing those products to your external clients, right? And that made me remember an experience that I had many years ago when I was managing projects, right? So I was managing projects, and I was basically tracking your traditional metrics, right? So at that time, I was managing a number of software development initiatives, more so to develop games for mobile phones. And what happened was, we were delivering projects on time, on budget, the scope, everything was really perfect, right? Not many defects. So everything was by the book. But then when we were testing those games with the end users, they were saying, yeah, this game looks good, but it's kind of boring. So what was the outcome of that conversation, right? Yeah, we did everything perfectly, but the end user didn't see value in that game, right? It was not fun from them. So really what the organization was trying to achieve was, we want more people downloading our games, because if they do that, they were going to be more interested in buying the new phones that we are launching in the market, right? So, and if we're not selling phones, that's going to impact our revenue, our profit, and it's going to impact our shareholders as well, right? So I think at the end of the day, that was an experience that made me think about, I have to understand what my end client values, right? And those are the metrics that really matters at the end. I'm not saying that delivering projects on time or on budget are not important. They might be, but really might not be what your end customers are looking for, right? So those are not metrics that they care about. So I should be spending more time in what is as you said, the NPS, right? Or the customer satisfaction level, right? I'm meeting the needs they have. I'm expanding my customer base as well. I'm increasing my revenue, right? Because now I have more clients. So those could be more metrics that the PMO can help the organization to enable, right? So I typically say that the PMO should not try to meet its own needs, right? But we should be enabling the business to meet their needs, right? Or their goals. If we are enabling them, I think we are doing our job.
And that's such a great insight there, Bruno, like just to build on that, because you're saying that sometimes, especially when you start maybe a bit more junior in your career, you think about
Mm-hmm.
the immediate, let's call it myopic, just right here, project outcome, like very local, the outcomes themselves. What you're saying is as you start being more strategic and your scope of initiatives grows, you start thinking as PMO leader over this second layer, impact, third degree towards the end customer ultimately. Because you have the internal customer, then you have the end customer. So you need to think about the whole chain from you at the center, and you have this project, internal customer, then external customers. And then each layer needs to have its own kind of guiding measure to judge whether you're moving the outcome, the needles, in the right direction for what they value the most. Otherwise, you can risk you becoming as a PMO obsolete because you're not seen as value add for their specific outcomes. So that's a great point that you raised there.
Exactly, exactly. No, that's awesome. Okay, so let me jump into my next question here, Ramzi. So, a lot of organizations today, right, and as I said at the beginning, regardless of the industry, right, are going through some sort of digital transformation, right? So, based on your experience, how the PMO, how the project management team, sometimes they don't have a PMO yet, but they have project managers, right, can support that digital transformation for those organizations?
Great question. It might sound counterintuitive and just calling it direct. I found from experience the best way that you can be a PMO and drive outcomes of digital transformation is not call yourself a PMO when you start working with the teams. Uh, reason being, I think the word PMO comes with a lot of luggage, and anytime the word PMO is mentioned, typically it's associated with overhead, waterfall, not focused on value. It's very myopic, as we described, like focused on this project itself, not the bigger picture, not strategic. Uh, uh, that's what immediately comes in people's mind. So one tip I found, it's at least early days, don't call it PMO. Just get into digital delivery execution, digital transformation execution, digital transformation acceleration. Like there's so many names you can go around it, like because you don't want nomenclature or the word get in the way of the outcomes. Like it's not worth it, like in terms of you following by the book. So you want to be a bit more creative. And that brings back the same point that Bruno has raised is moving immediately to value and the problem that you try to solve for the organization. So in the context of digital transformation, you move super quick to say, okay, what is this three things always, like you ask whenever a transformation is launched. Ask question number one, what's the strategy here, i.e. what's the vision, the outcomes, the results, maybe high-level roadmap and things that needs to be done. So that's question number one you'd be asking. Question number two, ask about structures, like who's doing what, how are we organized, where's the overlap, how can we manage dependencies, which teams are involved. So that's the structural element that you need to address in terms of transformation. Third and last is the systems element. What I mean by that is all the different checkpoints, steercos, governance systems. I would say even reporting and metrics, KPIs, and all that, it falls under that systems buckets. These are the three things you would be asking from the get-go right away, and then see how you can position yourself as PMO, quote unquote, informally, to drive these outcomes and keep drilling down that you're here to help them solve these problems and drive the outcomes. You're not here to just report the story and putting colors on dashboard and everything. You're here to help them solve problems. And the quicker you're able to do that, the more you get trusted and the more people give you more responsibilities and they start giving you even more things to add to your bucket of things to do. It's like, oh, you drove this thing, you helped us get the outcomes and kept things organized in spite of all the unknowns and chaos and things moving around. Let's add more responsibility from execution point of view. And then within these, that's when you can start gradually formalizing it into PMO. You start saying, now let me anchor some standards of how we deliver. Let me start defining some playbooks. Let me develop some standardized training curriculums for any new incoming PMs using all these lessons. So you start putting it all together, and then by default, as you can see, it becomes a PMO, and you can call it PMO at that stage. It doesn't matter, but you have had proven the value by doing all this. So it doesn't get forced. It's like, oh, I'm going to push a PMO. and then I'm going to put all these structures. Nobody likes that, especially in context of digital. And it is a fair thing, because whenever you talk about digital, it means you don't know the answer directly. You need to test and learn. That's the whole nature of digital and transformation to begin with. You're testing, you're learning, and the test didn't work, you need to tweak it. But then some tests work, you need to improve it. So it puts you in that position. It helps you be seen as a partner rather than someone who's coming across as just governing people around. And I see a hand up there. Rodrigo, over to you.
Go ahead, Rodrigo. You are on mute, Rodrigo.
Sorry. Hi,
Yes.
How are you? I'm not supposed if I need to add my question on the chat, or I can make the question right away.
Go ahead, my friend. This is a group of friends.
Okay. Hi, Ramzi. Hi, Bruno. Thank you so much for having this conversation here. My question is related to digital transformation, Ramzi. I could see on your LinkedIn profile, you started on the oil and gas industry, right? And then you moved to some other specific industries before working with digital transformation, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I think this digital transformation hype started like 8 to 10 years ago, right? Organizations in general started to put together their digital transformation, PMO, etc., trying to motivate and encourage people to work with innovation in their organizations, etc. My question is, do you think there is a right time to put together this PMO for digital transformation purposes in the organization? Let's say, for example, that the company wants to launch right away a digital transformation plan. Do you think once they make this decision, the right decision that comes with this is to put together this PMO right after that? Or do you think it's a better idea to wait for the company to get more mature in terms of initiatives, innovations, etc., for this kind of PMO? I'm not sure if it's clear, my question.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question, Rodrigo, because if I interpret correctly, you're speaking about when's the right time frame to introduce digital transformation PMOs, considering the journey of each company is different on that
Exactly.
one. So absolutely. And so just to answer it directly, in my opinion, it has to do with the scope of what you're trying to deliver, i.e., if it's, theory, right? Like digital transformation has, roughly speaking, two elements. There's the paperless aspect or internal digitization, like you're making your internal processes more efficient, you're making them digital, automated, and now we're throwing a bunch of Gen AI on top of them. Like that's the internal aspect of transformation. And there's the external one that the customers see, i.e., you used to do banking in the branch, and now you can do it on your mobile app. And you can do everything there. You can open an account, you can add credit, you can do payments. You don't need to visit the branch or talk to anybody on the phone. So that's another, like roughly, I'm oversimplifying, but that's two elements of any digital transformation. Which brings me to that PMO question. I would ask how big and where are we with these two elements in that given organization? Like if it's a simple one-off app or kind of project within the organization, there's definitely no need for going full scale immediately into that bigger PMO and start standardizing methodologies and everything, because it's such a limited scope and it's such a limited kind of outcome they're trying to deliver. You wouldn't want to outgrow the organization, so it would be probably on a leaner aspect, probably barely even a PM kind of in the vicinity to drive that thing. So it would be very small. I found from experience when things start getting bigger and start getting complex and you start having dependencies, and especially if your organization is this enterprise-wide, you have tens, hundreds of thousands of employees globally, and your product is cutting across multiple lines of business, and then there's multiple projects adding up to each other and they're all overstepping each other. This is definitely, you need that kind of, to some extent, like a traffic cop to be able to make sure that everything is approved properly, making sure everything is delivered, making sure the value is clear in terms of realization. So that's where I would think you would lean towards having that PMO. And that was the case in our organization as well. So we knew from the beginning that this transformation is going to be big, it's going to be complex, it's super urgent. Like there's a lot of time pressure to drive outcomes and report them quarterly to our shareholders and everything. All that led to, from the get-go, we said we need to have an organization that clarifies the value and make sure everything is transparently reported and we're able to drive the outcomes and escalate and everything. So we made that conscious decision from the get-go because of that complexity and the challenges that we anticipated. So we know it's big, we know it's complex, we know it's important. So we made a decision that we're going to need that organization that helps drive it. Otherwise, it would be free for all to be chaotic, and we would have zero clarity where things are standing. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. That totally makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I really love the conversation. Thanks, Rodrigo, for the question as well, right? I love the answer, Ramzi. I think the exact same way, right? I typically use an analogy to explain that to other people that I interact with, right? So if I have a little store, a small store, and I don't have many clients yet, right? So I have one client, let's say every hour. So I can spend time with that client. I can explain to them the different products I have and how those products will perhaps meet their needs, right? So that's good. I don't need to hire more people because I can meet the needs of my clients, right? But now if I have 10 clients an hour, that's a different story, right? I may not have the time to explain to everybody, each product and how those products are going to be meeting their needs. And then I need to hire someone else, right? So my operating costs now are going to be higher, right? But as long as the value that I'm delivering to my clients is higher than the operating cost that I have, and the way I'm going to measure that is that, yeah, my revenue is increasing because now I have more clients and they are satisfied. So therefore, I'm going to have even more clients. That's the moment where I can see that I need to hire more people, and I'm going to be very specific on how they're going to be supporting my clients, right? So it's not going to be from day one. So that's the exact same thing I see in many organizations today, right? We are bringing these PMOs, and these PMOs, for the most part, they are going to be cost centers, right? So it's added cost to your organization, right? So if they are only there for compliance, for reporting on metrics that really nobody cares, I really don't see much value in those PMOs. I think there's value in the project managers. We need the project managers to drive those initiatives, but perhaps we don't need a PMO yet. But then once you have many projects and you have those dependencies and you need to do value realization, you need to help the organization to prioritize those projects because we don't have capacity to manage all those projects at the same time. I think that's the moment where a PMO can be extremely helpful.
Right. I love that analogy, Bruno. I might start using it going forward. And especially like on that one, like as a litmus test or like a quick way of thinking about it, I found I'm sure several of you, if not everyone, could relate to this. Like sometimes you go to, let's say, a committee or a meeting, and then you find like half the room are PMs, then half the other room is like people actually doing the work. This is where I start thinking something is wrong here. It's like how come we're having more people coordinating, getting things organized and everything, or the other way around. It's like it ends up 70% they're just a bunch of PMs, and then you have the different people who are delivering, and that's when I immediately I get a bit antsy, and I'm like, you know what, maybe let's pull the PMs out of this conversation because I can't believe we're having so many PMs and everyone is asking statuses and everything, but not as many people driving. But then vice versa, you have to also be careful if you have just people getting things done, i.e. developers or product owners or product managers, but then you don't have anybody coordinating the different bigger picture together. That's also on the flip side, like you don't have the right element of coordination. So, and this is like exactly to Bruno's point, like you need to have the right size of PMs, PMOs, that overhead aspect that is fit for purpose of your organization. It should be at the same level.
Awesome. So Ramzi, I want to flip the conversation a little bit because we are talking about how the PMO can enable digital transformation to other organizations. Now I wanted to ask you how the PMO can benefit from modern technology as well, right? So in your experience managing technology programs and technology PMOs, right? What are the technology that you see that perhaps will be the most impactful for PMOs going forward?
Absolutely. And love that question because it's always like that famous people process technology aspect of things. And I'm a kind of person who's a big proponent of people process before technology. That's typically my shortcut or heuristic about things we face or problems we try to solve. What I mean by that is I try to make sure that we have great people, meaning top-notch, both personality, character, and capability as PMs and problem solvers. I think that's super critical to have that as baseline. And then number two, making sure that the way we work together is conducive to the outcomes. That's the process aspect. And then it goes to that technology element of it. So in my view, as you solve that people aspect and the process aspect, this is when you can start thinking about these new technologies that can help you to make your PMOs more effective. I found in every organization that I've seen different maturity level, baseline, you definitely need some sort of, as much as people might not like it, some sort of PPM, portfolio project management tool. Whether you use CAPPM Clarity or you use some customized solutions, which we also have like some custom internal tools, you definitely need that. When I was earlier in my career, I didn't see value in that, honestly, because maybe I was a user of it. But then the more you grow into different projects and programs, you start seeing the value in it being able to be used as a source of truth. Because sometimes you argue over what's the truth about statuses of challenges. You want to lean on this tool and technology and system that helps you organizationally, anywhere, location-wise, which project, whichever, you all know exactly what's the status, what's the outcomes, who's driving what to your fingertips. I think that's a baseline. You need to have some sort of PPM tool so it can help drive your PMOs. That's one thing. And any organization that doesn't have it established, they spend so much time investing to be able to get to that level because it's super critical. Number two, when you go to the project level delivery, that's, from my experience, that I found it's a bit of a mixed bag. So whether you want to go into your MS projects or Smartsheet or Jira even, or you want to use Monday, whichever, my approach or I try to iterate with my different project managers, find a tool that works for you and helps you with your stakeholders. Back to that customer orientation. So it's almost like I'm indifferent about what tool is used as long as you have something that you're using. I mean, heck, even if you're using Excel as a Gantt chart and tracker of your risk and issues, as long as your stakeholder are able to understand what's in it and they're able to input things and use it, that usability is the most important thing. Just make sure that there's no barrier to entry. Like, don't make a tool that somehow people have to learn how to use, like a learning curve. Like, because not everyone is a PM, not like this audience here. People come from different walks of life. They look at these tools, they don't understand it. It's like, oh, you tell me MS Project and it's online. It's connected to many sub projects, and I don't get it. I'm not gonna use it. Can you give me a Gantt chart? It's like you want to avoid that. Like you want to help find the common denominator, the tool that you can use with everybody. And third and last, no surprise, we're testing and we're evaluating everything related to AI, Gen AI, over how we can help our life easier. Several of you are already using these things like Copilot, ChatGPT. I think there's definitely a lot of room to leverage it even further these days in terms of helping you the whole phase of project, whether you talk about scoping early days, execution, framing the risk and the issues, capturing the minutes even from your meetings and being able to send it to the senior stakeholders and then synthesize at the right level. So it's very clear at C-level. Governance in terms of simply proposing what could be the right structure and the metrics and everything. So there's definitely a lot of things that we're testing from technology point of view on the Gen AI side of things to be able to drive that. So that's my summary in terms of PPM side of things, execution, Gen AI elements.
Excellent. We have two questions, Ramzi. First one is from Athanasius. So Athanasius, do you want to ask a question?
Thank you for today's session and the information shared. I would like to ask if there are any practical examples or, let's say, sources where we could improve, let's say, our PMO service. As you mentioned, we were sharing great decks with probably very useful information, but myself as well, I'm not feeling that we are delivering something that we couldn't deliver 10 years ago in terms of PMO practices. So do you have any recommendation on that direction?
I might throw that at you, Bruno. I think you're deep. And by the way, that's a kind of, how to say.
And thank you in advance.
Absolutely. Like Bruno has tons of references with PMI and connections on that side of the world. I'm sure he has tons of references on that side.
Yeah, I totally hear you, Athanasius. I think the question you're asking, we see that in lots of different PMOs as well, right? You are measuring things, you are creating reports, you are creating PowerPoints and all those things, but people are not really paying attention, right? And that's typically a message to you that the information that you are providing to them is not the information they are looking for. Or perhaps the way that you are conveying the information to them is not a way that they need for decision making, right? So I think it's important for you to start having a conversation, and that can be very casual, right? With your PMO customers, right? Could be, your project managers, could be, your boss, could be, finance, IT, whoever you interact with, and ask them, look, what are the key pain points that you have today, right? And how can I help you, right? What can I do from a project delivery perspective that's going to make your life a little bit easier, right? What is the information that you need from us that's going to help you to make better decisions, right? And I think if you start having those questions and asking those questions and listen to those answers, that will give you some indication whether or not the metrics, the reports, the information you're providing to them is really adding value to them, right? If you are not hearing feedback, then I guess you have your answer already. It's not really what they're looking for. So just go around, ask those questions, listen to them, and see how we can perhaps shift the way your governance, your processes, your reports are established today to deliver the information they are looking for. That would be my suggestion. I don't know, Ramzi, if you want to add anything else.
Absolutely. I love it. I think the underlying overlaying theme is incorporating customer feedback, including your stakeholders' feedback, because they are your customer. That's the biggest thing. And it seems the theme of this conversation today. It's making sure that you test and learn. And more practically, like my approach is with the C-level executives in our organization, I put 3 best options that I think are relevant for the thing that we want to present. Option 1, 2, 3. And I go to the extremes, like in terms of what I would want to present. And then I quickly share it with them and say, is that up to your expectations? Is there anything missing? For sure, you will get feedback because the C-level, they're super vocal and they always have strong opinions. They're super smart for a reason. They end up there, right? So they're going to get a lot of feedback and use that feedback. I love that one of the Scale Agile trainer used to say, feedback is a gift, which is true. Use it. It's like, thank you, great feedback. Let me take it away. I'm going to merge, integrate, because probably it's not going to be either one of these option 1, 2, 3. It's going to be a hybrid of some elements. And then you come up back with the feedback and you're going to give them that dashboard, whatever they're looking for. And then be super transparent over the efforts, because present it back and say, great, we're going to add all these metrics, but it's going to take a lot of effort and this time, and we're going to need resources to be able to deploy it. I.e., be realistic when you present something to them. Like, don't promise things that you can't deliver ultimately, because they're so removed from the reality. Sometimes you have to bring that reality check at that level to make it clear over what's the delta in terms of time, budget, effort to deliver what they're aspiring to, and tell them you're not going to get it tomorrow. You're going to get it over several quarters, for example, that we're going to deploy.
Yeah. So Ramzi, we have time for one more question from John. John, go ahead, ask your question.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Ramzi, for putting this together. I wanted to dive into that value discussion more tactically because as my thinking about PMOs have matured over the last 20 years, it's gotten less from on time, on budget, and it's much more thinking about how are we doing against the business case and those metrics, as well as in the agile or hybrid agile world, when is a capability delivered? Not the end rollout, but when is an interim capability? And I'm curious if your client, or sorry, not your client, but your customer and your leadership is thinking along the same way, or are they still looking at I want to know time, schedule, budget, all of the tactical that we all grew up in
Yeah.
PMI?
Yeah, I could answer that. Great question, John. So the way we're thinking about it is quite simple for a reason, because then you can communicate it. When it's something simple, you can communicate it broadly. Financials 100%, because ultimately we're a financial institution. You need to have some sort of ROI. Like that is baseline, and a lot of companies, they cannot move you can't move anything if you don't have those financials clear. Second element is that customer experience that Bruno described. Being hyper focused over what customer values, whether you talk about NPS scores or any other metrics that is maybe lagging to that. Third, internally, you need to think about your operations or employees, i.e., are you making your employees and life simpler? Are you talking about removing manual work? Are you talking about straight-through processing? Are you talking about employee engagement? That's the internal metric that you also need to measure. And then number 4, it's more in context of digital transformation. You need to measure some elements of you moving on digital, i.e., are you deploying more websites? Are you removing non-digital channels, people calling? These are the kind of things you would also be thinking about. So all these together, they give you this holistic picture of how progression is going. Last but not least, I think you mentioned it, John, which is these capabilities. Like, what are the new capabilities you're building? Whether you're talking about architectural runway, like technology-related capabilities, or people capabilities, or processes, you need to think from that element. And I found that's the most difficult one to get it aligned, surprisingly, with our different executives, because it's almost like that's very esoteric, like very wishy-washy sometimes. It's like, yeah, we're going to build great culture and change capabilities. That's the one that's the most important and the most difficult to measure. That's what we keep finding over and over again. And that's the things that you would want to be very thoughtful about it, and don't let people lose sight over it at the expense of the kind of the financials at the top, because they always start with the financials.
I'm also going to suggest there, because this is what I've done in the past, is have your stakeholders commit to that capability to report then to their leadership to say, we need this to be able to go forward, or this is a proof of concept, and we have a go, no-go decision.
Absolutely, 100%. Because and that's the concept of buy-in, 100%. Like, if they're not bought into it, it's not going to move. That for sure.
So I'll stop my rambling because I know we're running over time.
I think, Bruno, we're going to need more of these.
Excellent questions, John. Thank you so much. And by the way, that has been my experience as well, John. The PMO more as a channel to show value realization, if those business cases have been achieved or not, right? But as a way to hold the business accountable for those things, right? So, Ramzi, you said that if I invest $1 million in your project, that we are going to achieve, more revenue or more clients and whatever, right? Have we achieved that, right? So in a lot of organizations, project is done, we forgot the business case, right? I think the PMO is helping to hold the organizations accountable, and those executives accountable as well for the things that they said. Okay, excellent. So I'm sorry, folks. We are over time here, but I appreciate everyone staying with us until the end. I appreciate the questions as well. We'll continue having more conversations like these. And I have another conversation, another webinar on February 12th with Dr. Tony Prensa. We're going to be talking about, will your PMO survive the next 5 years? Trends you need to know. So that's going to be an interesting conversation with Dr. Tony, who is an expert in PMOs, a global keynote speaker as well. So I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But thank you so much for your time today, folks, and we'll touch base soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.